She bought bread. They chased her like a criminal. But when her brother arrived, the cops realized they had made the biggest mistake of their careers. Sister Jacqueline Brooks stepped out of the corner bakery, balancing 2 paper bags filled with warm bread and fresh pastries. The scent of cinnamon and butter clung to the air as she adjusted her grip, preparing for the short walk back to the shelter. It was a Saturday morning ritual, one she had done countless times, but today was about to be different. Just as she turned the corner, she noticed a young boy, maybe 16, locked in a tense argument with a street vendor. The kid was rail thin, his sneakers barely holding together, and his backpack looked like it had survived more than a few battles. He pointed at a sandwich, his voice tight with frustration. Jacqueline didn't hesitate. She stepped forward. "I'll pay for it." The vendor, a wiry man with a permanent scowl, barely glanced at her. "This isn't your business, sister." Jacqueline's lips curled into a knowing smile. "My faith says that helping others is always my business." She pulled out a few bills and handed them over without another word. ****. The boy grabbed the sandwich, eyes flickering with gratitude before he took off down the street. Problem solved, or at least it should have been, because right then, 2 cops turned the corner. One of them, tall, square-jawed, the type who probably used his reflection to practice his intimidation face, immediately locked eyes on the retreating teen. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" The kid froze mid-step, his entire body stiffening like a deer caught in headlights. Jacqueline barely had time to process what was happening before both officers started moving toward him. "Excuse me," she said, stepping between them. "What's the problem?" The taller cop barely looked at her. "Theft." Jacqueline's eyebrows shot up. "Theft? He didn't steal anything. I just paid for his food." The second cop, shorter but just as smug, narrowed his eyes. "You sure about that? Maybe you're just covering for him." That did it. Jacqueline felt her pulse quicken, her fingers tightening around the paper bags in her arms. She had just bought a sandwich for a hungry kid, and now, somehow, she was the one under suspicion. "Ma'am, I need to see some ID." Jacqueline exhaled slowly. "Why?" The taller cop crossed his arms. "Because you're interfering in an active investigation." That was so ridiculous, Jacqueline actually let out a laugh. "Investigation? You're chasing a kid for a sandwich. There's nothing to investigate." The humor was lost on them. Both officers stepped closer, their postures shifting into something firmer, more aggressive. "Are you refusing to comply with a lawful order?" Jacqueline felt her heartbeat thudding in her ears. She had done nothing wrong, but she knew exactly where this was headed. "I'm saying I don't have to." The air between them thickened. The boy was long gone now, vanished into the streets, but somehow the problem hadn't left with him. It had landed squarely on her shoulders. The taller cop reached for his radio. "All right, ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us." Jacqueline blinked. "You're arresting me for buying a sandwich?" The shorter cop hesitated. He knew how ridiculous this sounded, but instead of backing down, he just doubled down. "It's not an arrest, just a standard procedure." Jacqueline knew exactly what that meant. Standard procedures were rarely standard when you were black. She let out a slow breath, adjusted her grip on the paper bags, then bolted. "Hey, stop right there!" A siren blared to life behind her. They were actually chasing her, over a sandwich. Jacqueline ran down the sidewalk, gripping the paper bag so tight she could hear the bread inside getting crushed. Her heart pounded, but it wasn't fear driving her. It was pure, unfiltered rage. Because seriously, this was what they chose to care about? A nun helping a hungry kid was apparently enough to set off a whole police chase. "Ridiculous, just ridiculous," she muttered, weaving between pedestrians. The wail of sirens grew louder as a patrol car swung around the corner, cutting off her path. "Stop or we will use force." Jacqueline's breath hitched. Use force? On a 50-year-old nun? Over bread? This had gone from absurd to straight-up dystopian. And that's when she made a decision. If they were going to make a scene, fine. She'd give them one. She skidded to a halt in the middle of the sidewalk, spun around, and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Do not touch me." People turned. Pedestrians who had been minding their business suddenly weren't. A couple of them pulled out their phones. "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it has to be," one of the cops barked, his hand hovering a little too close to his belt. Jacqueline's eyes narrowed. "Oh, So now it was her making this hard? I'm a nun buying food for the homeless, and y'all are out here trying to tackle me like I just robbed a bank? She spread her arms wide. Really? More phones went up. A group of teenagers nearby whispered excitedly. The taller cop turned toward the crowd. Everyone needs to stop recording and move along. Oh, wrong move. Because telling people to stop filming in this day and age, that was the fastest way to make sure they filmed even more. Now, Jacqueline didn't exactly love being the center of attention. But if she had to choose between getting thrown to the ground in the dark or having dozens of cameras pointed at these cops, well, that was an easy choice. Still holding her bags of bread, she pivoted and sprinted down the nearest alley. Hey! Footsteps thundered behind her. She cut left, heart pounding, her habit catching the wind as she darted past a fruit stand. The vendor barely blinked as she knocked over a few apples. Then, a door, slightly open. A laundromat. She didn't think. She dove inside. Rows of washing machines whirred softly. The scent of detergent filled the air. Jacqueline pressed herself against a rack of drying clothes, trying to steady her breathing. 2 seconds later, slam. The door burst open. Did someone just run in here? One of the cops huffed, out of breath. Behind the counter, a woman in her 60s peered over her reading glasses. And who exactly are you looking for? A black woman, short, dressed as a nun. Jacqueline squeezed her eyes shut. Lord have mercy. The laundromat lady didn't blink. You hear yourselves? Silence. The taller cop shuffled awkwardly. We're just checking. Uh-huh. The woman cut him off. Well, I ain't seen anyone like that. But I have seen a whole lot of folks filming outside. Y'all might want to deal with that instead of busting up my laundromat. The officers hesitated. Then, just like that, they left. Jacqueline let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Slowly, carefully, she pulled out her phone. One number, one call. Hey, Will, we got a problem. Jacqueline stepped out of the laundromat like nothing had happened, adjusting the crushed bread bags in her arms. She barely made it 5 steps before... There she is! The cops locked eyes on her and charged. Jacqueline? She didn't run, didn't flinch. She stopped on her own, right in front of their patrol car, folded her arms, and smiled. That threw them off. What's funny? One of them asked. Oh, nothing, Jacqueline mused. I just think we should have a real conversation. Before they could respond, a sleek black sedan rolled to the curb. The door swung open. Out stepped a man who looked like he owned the whole street. Tall, sharp suit, the kind of presence that made people listen. His voice was steady. Sister Jacqueline, are you all right? The cops froze. Wait, your sister? The man barely glanced at them. Federal Judge William Brooks. His tone was pure steel, and I'd love to hear why my sister was just chased through the streets. Silence. The taller cop swallowed hard. Misunderstanding, sir. William pulled out his phone. Great. I'll let the DOJ sort it out. Panic. The cops nearly tripped over themselves. Sir, please, this isn't necessary. Jacqueline tilted her head. So, let me get this straight. I buy food, you assume a crime, you chase me through the streets, and now that I have connections, it's all just a misunderstanding? Neither had an answer for that. William sighed. I suggest you rethink how you do your job. Next time, maybe don't assume someone's a criminal just because they don't fit your expectations. The message was loud and clear. The cops scurried off, looking like their careers just took a serious hit. Jacqueline turned to her brother. Think they learned anything? William smirked. Doubt it, but they won't forget it. Jacqueline chuckled, shifting the bread bags. Well then, I'd say that's justice served. And with that, she walked away, head high, heart steady.